The end and the beginning of part H. Shikata Ganai. Ahem. When the occupants of the elevator car... When the occupants of the elevator car, Bangkok friend, learned that Clark had broken away. Clark was the asteroid that the elevator was connected to. Learned that Clark had broken away, and the cable was falling. They hurried to the foyer and the locker room. Foyer? I don't know how to say that word, but you know what I mean. To the is it foyer or foyer? I'll wait. Someone correct me. I'm already embarrassed. And if you don't correct me, I'll just keep going. Foyer? Really? Oh, okay. Oh, I'm getting mixed responses. All right. You're all stupid. Foyer and the locker room and pulled on emergency spacesuits as fast as they could. And for a wonder, there was no general panic. It all happened in the heart. On the surface, everyone was businesslike and attentive to the small group at the locked door who were trying to determine where exactly they were and when they should abandon the car. This steadiness amazed Peter Claiborne, whose own blood was hammering through his body in great adrenal shocks. He wasn't sure he could have spoken if he had to. A man in the group at the front told them in level tones that they were approaching the aerosynchronous point, and so they all pulled into the lock together until they were jammed in like the suits had been in the storage closet. And then they locked the lock and sucked the air. The outer door slid open, and there it was. A big rectangle of starry death black space. It was daunting indeed to launch into it in an untethered spacesuit. It felt to the young man like suicide. But the ones at the front pulled out, and the rest followed. Like spores from an exploding seed pod. The car and the elevator dwindled eastward and quickly disappeared. Thank you. I can get it more in frame. The car and the elevator dwindled eastward and quickly disappeared. The cloud of spacesuits began to disperse. Many of them stabilized with their feet towards Mars, which lay below them like a dirty basketball. When steady, they ignited their main rockets and lofted upward. The group doing the calculations was still on the common band, talking it over as if it were a chess problem. They were near the aerosynchronous orbit, but with a downward velocity of several hundred kilometers an hour. Burning half their main pack's fuel. Thank you, mods. The group doing the calculations was still on the common band, talking it over as if it were a chess problem. They were near the aerosynchronous orbit. but with a downward velocity of several hundred kilometers an hour. Burning half their main pack's fuel counteracted that, most of that. And then they would be in an orbit much more stable than would be strictly necessary. Sorry, it's hard to figure out how to like what tone I should have when I'm reading some of these things. They were near the aerosynchronous, and this is a really long sentence, and there has not been a period yet. They were near the aerosynchronous orbit, but with a downward velocity of several hundred kilometers an hour. Burning half their main pack's fuel would counteract most of that, and then they would be in an orbit much more stable than would be strictly necessary, given their air supplies. In other words, they would die later of asphyxiation rather than sooner of re-entry heat. But then, that had been the whole point of bailing out in the first place. It was possible rescuers might appear in the grace period. One never knew. Clearly, most people were willing to give it a try. I don't remember hearing about any rescue efforts. Then again, the radios were down, so... The young man pulled his rocket control rods out of his wrist consoles and put his fingers and thumbs on the buttons and got the world between his boots and shot away from it for a little while. Some of the others were trying to stay together, but he judged that it was impossible and a waste of fuel, and let them drift off above him until they were just more stars. He wasn't as frightened as he had been in the locker, but he was angry and sad. He didn't want to die. A spasm of grief for his lost future shook through him, and he cried aloud and wept. After a while, the physical manifestations went away, even though he felt just as miserable as before. He stared dully at the stars. Occasional gusts of fright or despair shuddered through him, but they became less frequent as the minutes dragged on, and then the hours. He tried to slow his metabolism, but the effort had the opposite effect, and he decided to forget about it. Although, first, he did call up his pulse rate on his wrist console. 108 beats a minute. Lucky he hadn't checked when they were suiting up and bailing out. He grimaced and tried identifying the constellations. Time dragged by. He woke up, and when he realized he had fallen asleep, he was both appalled and amused, and promptly fell back asleep. Then, after a time, he was awake again. This time for good. The other refugees from the car were out of sight, though some stars seemed to move against the backdrop, and could have been them. No sign of the elevator, in space or down on the planet's surface. It was an odd way to go. Something like the night before a date with the firing squad, perhaps. Spent in a dream of space. Death would be like space, except without the stars or the thinking. It was a tedious wait in some ways. It made him impatient, and he considered turning off his heating system and having done with it. Knowing he could do that made the wait easier, and he figured that he would do it when the air supply was about to run out. The thought put his pulse up to 130, and he tried to concentrate on the planet below. Home sweet home. He was still in aerosynchronous orbit. It had been hours, and Tharsis was still below, but a bit further to the west. He was over Marinaris. Hours passed, and without intending to, he fell asleep again. When he woke up, there was a small silver spacecraft hanging before him like a UFO. And he shouted with surprise and started tumbling helplessly. He worked with the rockets feverishly to bring himself under control, and when he managed it, the craft was still there. Yay! There was a woman's face in a side window port, talking to him and pointing to her ear. He turned on the common band, but she wasn't on it. He couldn't find her. Oh God, he's hallucinating. No. I'm scared. Surely he's saved. This book has never gotten my hopes up to dash them before. He turned on the common band, but she wasn't there. But she wasn't on it. He couldn't find her. He rocketed over toward the craft and scared the woman by nearly crashing into it. He managed to arrest and draw back a bit. The woman was gesturing. Did he want in? He made a clumsy circle with a gloved forefinger and thumb, nodding so vigorously that he started tumbling again. As he spun, he saw a bay door open behind the window, on top of the craft. He got the suit stabilized and puffed toward the bay, wondering if it would be real when he got to it. He touched the open doorway and tears sprang to his eyes. He blinked, and the teardrop spheres floated into his faceplate as he flattened against the bottom of the bay. He had an hour of air left. When the bay was closed and pumped, he unsealed his helmet and lifted it off. The air was thin and oxygen-rich and cool. The bay lock door opened, and he pushed through. Women were laughing. God damn it, women. Laughing at a man at the lowest point of his life. Also, ooh, oh, whoa. Just you in space. Spacecraft full of women. Alien women. I'm kidding. Okay. Yeah, literally the peepo blubbers. I just almost died and they're laughing. Okay, there's only 2 of them. All of a sudden, I was imagining like 8 women, like just a group of women. Okay, women were laughing. There were 2 of them aboard, and they were in high spirits. What were you going to do, land in that? One asked. I was on the elevator, he said, voice cracking. We had to jump off. Have you picked up anyone else? Why are they laughing? I'm so pissed off right now. You're the only one we've seen. Want to ride down? He could only gulp. They laughed at him. Again, it says that. They laughed at him. You want to ride down? Tee. We're amazed we ran into anyone out here, boy. How many G's are you comfortable with? I don't know, 3? They laughed again. Why? How many can you take? A lot more than that, said the woman. Said the woman who had looked out at him. A lot more? He scoffed. How many more can a person take? We'll find out, the other woman said and laughed. And the little craft began to accelerate down. Very true, Roar. A lot more, he scoffed. How many more can a person take? We'll find out, the other woman said and laughed. The little craft began to accelerate down towards Mars. You know, some people laugh like nervously when they're traumatized. Maybe that's what it is. The little craft began to accelerate down towards Mars. The youth lay exhausted in a chair behind the 2 women, asking questions and sucking down water and cheddar cheese from a tube. They had been on one of the mirror complexes and had hijacked this emergency descender after sending the mirrors tumbling in a tangle of molecule-thin sheets. Okay, so they're traumatized too. All right, I'll forgive it. They're like, we're all laughing together, right? We just saved your fucking life. I'm gonna laugh so that I don't cry. I'm about to cry still. I might cry. Tears of joy, that is, because Peter is alive. They had been on one of the mirror complexes and had hijacked this emergency descender after sending the mirrors tumbling in a tangle of molecule-thin sheets. They were complicating their descent by shifting into a polar orbit. They were going to land near the South Polar Cap. Peter absorbed this in silence. Then they were bouncing wildly, and the windows became white, then yellow, then a deep, angry orange. Gravity forces jammed him back in his chair. His vision blurred, and his neck hurt. What a lightweight, one of the women said. And he didn't know if she meant him or the descender. Then the forces let off, and the window cleared. He looked out. They were dropping toward the planet in a steep dive, and were only a few thousand meters above the surface. He couldn't believe it. The women kept the craft in its radical stoop until it seemed they were going to spear the sand, and then at the last minute they flattened out. And again he was shoved back into his chair. Sweet, one of the women commented. And then boom. They were down and running over the layered terrain. Gravity again. Peter clambered out of the descender after the two women, down a walk tube and into a big rover, feeling stunned and ready to cry. There were two men in the rover, shouting greetings and hugging the women. "Who's this?" they cried. "Oh, we picked him up there. He jumped off the elevator. He's a bit spaced still." "Hey," she said to him with a smile. "We're down. It's okay." Wow. And that is the intro to part 8. And I will be back after a brief visit to the bathroom.